like so many others, my trains, maybe some of yours, and certainly some of the owners who've I've rebuilt their locomotives, diesel and steam, over many, many years, come with me with some of the same symptoms that I've experienced. And that is power is applied, the reverse unit hums, maybe even the drum rotates, or the drum rotates and it works beautifully forward and reverse for an hour or a day or a week. And then the very next time it's put on the track, it just hums. Or Dave, the only way I can get my train in a reverse unit or make it operative is to bang on the tender, shake it, and then all of a sudden it'll start working, and then all of a sudden it'll stop. Or it'll work for 2 days beautifully, like nothing's wrong, and then all of a sudden it stops working. I experienced the exact same thing. One day I just had about had it, and I was experimenting with these under power. I had the power applied to it. And I noticed that every time, and I'll just use this as an example, let's say that it's pushed in like that. One day I was just tinkering with it, and I noticed that if I pushed on the other side of the axle and pushed the drum through this side, all of a sudden it started working. And as long as it maintained this position, it worked fine. Press the axle, move the drum back over a little bit, and then it started that buzzing, or it got to the point where the drum would rotate or cycle, but the train wouldn't do anything. Now, let's suppose that it's in this position right here that it works, and that is the axle right here is pushed in or inserted. I found that I would take a piece of plastic right here and glue it on with super glue so that the axle never can come through this side again. Train worked beautifully. All I was doing was putting bubble gum on a dam. I really wasn't fixing the root cause. And one day I decided to even investigate it further and work for hours on the following. Now bear with me for a moment. This is a drum. That's one of the bands. This is the fingerboard. I know it doesn't look like it, but again, bear with me. And here's one of the fingers. What I began to notice was two things about the fingerboards. The surface of the finger should be in parallel in the same plane, let's say, as the board that holds it. What I was finding is that it is possible sometimes for these fingers on the grommet to rotate like this. And I'm going to exaggerate it so you can see it. Of course, in real life with the real fingerboard, it's very minuscule, but it still happens. It rotates on that grommet. The other thing I found is that sometimes the surface of the finger was not in the same plane as the fingerboard. I'm going to exaggerate it this time, so bear with me. It would be like in this relationship, which meant that probably the only portion of the finger that was touching the band on the drum would be this edge right here closest to my thumb. So now let me over exaggerate it and demonstrate that with our super duper drum we have here in the background. The finger is not in the same plane because it's twisted with the fingerboard. But the finger is touching the band on the drum just on the edge. Now you remember the axle, how little it slid, but yet it made a difference? What I noticed was that as the drum was slid in one direction, suddenly this one edge on the finger was no longer in contact with the drum. I went back over here and pushed it in, and all of a sudden it starts working. And back and forth and back and forth. That was like on and off and on and off. Now this is so small in scale, seeing it with a naked eye from the top down, looking down like this, it's very difficult to see that. And finally I noticed it when I started looking in this direction right here and moving the drum in and out. Here's the other possibility. The finger not only had this issue of being not in the same plane as the fingerboard, but it was rotating right here on the grommet. Again, same problem. Came off the drum band. Moved the drum back over a little bit, and it touched. It took me probably a year to find out about this. What I started doing after that is on every train I rebuild, one of the first places I go to is the reverse unit for this purpose. Especially, for example, for that customer that said, I have to bang on the tender to get it to work, and then it'll work for a while and it'll stop. Now, granted, there could be other issues. There could be loose wiring. There could be probably other things. But I have found this most frequent to be the issue. The first thing I do is that if there's a finger on the board, regardless of its position being in the same plane, it rotates and moves on that grommet, I'll simply replace the fingerboard. If I find that it's twisted like this, I'll simply take my pliers, my needle nose pliers, and work my way down that finger until I have kind of molded it back to be in the same plane as with the fingerboard. Reinsert it, put it back on, and bingo. The train works with consistency. This, to me, is one of the most difficult, common hidden problems I've ever had to discover to mitigate this issue, and I think it's the number one. Again, if somebody says we're going to replace your solenoid because we think it's burned out, I would question that and say, have you thoroughly inspected the reverse unit for this symptom or this cause and then repaired it?